Hey there, welcome back to Tips Over Tea. This is episode 24. I am Nicole, your host. We have the great pleasure of chatting with Dr. Nitya today about postpartum and pre-pregnancy preparation. There's things that we don't talk about a whole lot, like the type of environment that you have before you decide to conceive and the environment you have while you're pregnant and after pregnancy. And by environment, I mean food and mindset and physical environment as well. So if this is something you've been curious about or something that you know someone could use this information, I want to encourage you, go grab your tea and listen in and invite whoever it is you know could use this knowledge. And I'll see you soon. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tips Over Tea. This is episode 24. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Nitya to the call today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to join the conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. You have so much knowledge and background, but today we're going to focus on fertility and getting women ready to get pregnant, have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy post-pregnancy in the most natural way possible, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the things that women should pay attention to prior to getting pregnant?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because there's this concept that we talk about in naturopathic medicine that isn't, and in wellness, that isn't always talked about when you go to your OBGYN, which is preconception care, and it's getting ready for pregnancy. And I just had a phone call with someone the other day where they're like, I want to get pregnant now. And they're 29, she was 29. And I was like, well, you have plenty of time. And she was on an antidepressant. And I just was like, well, we want to get you healthy first, right? We want to get you healthy before you get pregnant. So that's the main thing. And there's so many things to look at. There's environmental toxins and exposures. And this is for both for both partners. If you're in a heterosexual couple, so for both men and for women. And usually it takes, we say we need at least 3 to 4 months because it takes 90 days for the ovaries to mature, the oocytes is what we call them, for them to mature. And we're talking about just 2 cells to make this one person. So you want to basically be as healthy as you can be. And you have to think of it as the whole couple being pregnant and getting on board. And so there's things we look at in terms of like food. What are you eating? Are you eating a lot of pro-inflammatory foods? We do need to look at caffeine intake. We know more than 2 cups of coffee and black tea even will significantly reduce the chances of fertility. And then there's so many chemicals. There's so much awareness now about the PFASs, which are it's a big clunky word. It's like I always forget it, polyfluorinated alkyl substances. They're what we know as the forever chemicals that were used. They're found in a lot of well water now. Minnesota did a study where they studied like 50,000 births in an area of Minnesota that had reduced fertility. It had reduced birth weight and premature babies and premature births. And they found that once they filtered the water, it went down significantly, all those rates. It's still a socioeconomic deprived area, so there's still some issues. There's still some reduced rates, but things like that where it's like, wow, the water that we're drinking, do we need to filter the water? What are we being exposed to? Those are really important things, and looking at what's in our environment, and then what are we eating in terms of, are we just eating lots of fast foods or lots of canned foods? Are we meeting our fresh fruits and vegetable requirements? Just really basic things that for a lot of people, unless you're, ill for some reason, we don't necessarily want. Not everybody's proactive. So it's really good to be screening if you, if anybody's working in primary care or wellness. It's really good to be speaking with your female clients about it ahead of time. And as soon as anybody says, I want to get pregnant, because really you could take a whole year if you think about it. And what we think of what's healthy is kind of always blows my mind. It's like, I'm healthy, but I'm taking these this medication for this and this medication for this, or I'm healthy, but I don't have normal bowel function, and just what we accept sometimes as what is actually healthy and what we think it is healthy is often not the case. And we don't want to be it's always a balance with health, right? We don't want to be necessarily going on to the other spectrum of things where we're creating a lot of anxiety, because we also need to look at what are your stress levels. I mean, that's a huge thing to think about, especially now. There's so much chaos and just everything, from what's going on with maybe the weather, the floods and the hurricanes and the tornadoes that are coming through in places that aren't used to it. And then COVID, and it affects everybody so differently in the world right now, even in the US, right? So there's just so many things where everything is really unstable right now. And, but there's so many tools, basic tools that we can work with to help people address mind body medicine, and just simple things like 5 minutes of breathing every day, or getting out of your car and not driving all the time, whatever the stressors are. And there's different levels of stress for everybody. Those are some of the main things. Those are some of the main basic things that we might address for somebody, depending on your level of health. And then I also work with people with various chronic illnesses. So I also will help some couples or women, or I also work with non-binary and trans folks, non-binary gender and trans folks who are trying to get pregnant as well, and women who are trying to get pregnant who maybe have been told, there's nothing really wrong with you. We can't figure out, why you're infertile. And that's a lot of women. And then there's a lot of miscarriages, a lot of stillbirths happening. And those could be women that were completely healthy beforehand, but because of a lot of chemicals in our environment, or because of our toxic food that we eat all the time, there's just a lot of nutritional deficiencies. Like, I think people don't realize things like zinc and choline and selenium contribute to your thyroid being healthy and contribute to your reproductive capacity. So, and those are people that are maybe coming in and think that they're healthy. And then there's also people who have chronic illnesses, like maybe an autoimmune disease that affects the gut health, like ulcerative colitis or something like that, where you're not absorbing and digesting your nutrients as well, or celiac disease, and maybe you don't eat wheat, but you haven't really addressed the whole gut and done gut healing programs. So there's different levels of where I'm working with people. And I could also work with someone who's had Lyme disease and they're recovering from that, or COVID and they're recovering from that, and they have chronic fatigue. And then we're kind of working on those things to try to get them to the place where in a couple of years they could maybe get pregnant. So it's all over the place. There's so many different things to think about. Yeah.
So for those who maybe have started late, like
late
30s, which makes them a high risk, you would still do a protocol that takes a couple of years, or would you? Well, I guess it depends on the things that they're dealing with too. So
yeah. Well, at least like 3 months. So for someone that's coming in late, even when you're 40 or something, we know, especially when you get to 35, just the reproductive capacity goes down significantly. But really, when you get to 40, it goes really low. And I was, my own story is that I was 38 when I started to try to conceive, and it took 3 years for me to get pregnant. And I learned a lot along the way, for sure. And I did I tried so many different things. I went to fertility acupuncture for a whole year, and I did some conventional treatments. I did IUDs. I didn't do IUIs, and I did some medications, and I did a very integrative approach. In the beginning, it was all natural, and then it's like, all right, we got to get some help. But really what helped get me pregnant was the shutdown and moving out to the country and doing like an EMF, electromagnetic field detox, and just being out in the woods, being out in the quiet with nature. That's really what I believe got me pregnant in the end. And that's like that's so important. And, because I had been doing a lot of the other things. But if someone's coming in, like 35 and up, it's always a discussion, especially depending on what their health concerns or health issues. If someone that's chronically ill, that's going to take longer. And then some women, I have had some women that were, wanted to have maybe a second child, and then they just decided, I'm just going to get healthy. I'm going to not, because sometimes when you go the fertility route and you're doing all the IVFs and all the treatments, that can be very stressful,
Yeah.
very, very stressful. And so some women just decide not to do that
Mm-hmm.
and just get healthy at that point. But if someone is like 35 and up, I probably would be looking at nutrition. I'd be looking at their gut health and doing a stool sample and looking at, is there anything in the gut that could be contributing to inflammation in the body? Because your gut health is what supports your immune system and your nervous system, and those are the foundations for good health. You got to have a good, strong nervous system, and you got to have a good, strong immune system, and those indirectly contribute to reproductive health. Because if you have our immune system just creating a lot of inflammation in the body and being off all the time, then you're not going to have a good reproductive capacity, good fertility there. So, yeah.
For your body, that means it's stressed, and it's like,
Yeah.
I want to bring somebody into this world. We are struggling here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the whole idea of preconception health is really just making the next generation healthy, and it's not a concept for most of us culturally that we have in our society in the United States, that we don't really think about the next generations really at all, very much. Unfortunately, we think a lot about the past and things that have happened to us, but we don't always think about how we're contributing to the next generation, as an ancestor, for example, for the next people that come along. And so that's just part of it too. There's like a whole spiritual aspect to it too, like, exploring where you came from and where you want to go, where do you want to take, your family heritage in a way too. So that's another thing that sometimes I explore with people as well. And sometimes with people, I'm always doing an assessment of the environment. What are you exposed to? Is there mold? Is there, did you have mold? A lot of people have, teachers, for example, work in water damaged buildings, and maybe they had mold that they were exposed to 10 years ago. And it could be that we need to do a test and see if their body is still processing that, and we need to help it out a little bit here or there.
So many things you don't think about. I know when I went through the functional medicine health coaching program, it was the first time I ever heard of pre-birth, like the things that they look at when and you too, because you guys, I know y'all are offshoots or, functional medicine and naturopath was first.
Yeah.
But just the fact that, like, if someone comes to you with issues, they like look all the way back to pre-birth, like what was the environment before your mom conceived, and what was the environment when she was pregnant with you. And I had never heard that concept until I went through that program, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you do prior to and during pregnancy really does prepare your child, set them up for success or not. So what are some of the things that during pregnancy, because I know, women will tend to have cravings for things, and like, to what point do you listen to your body's cravings, or what point do you eat like the healthy foods? Because I know sometimes cravings are not always the healthiest. Like, how does that like work or affect the fetus?
In general, or during pregnancy?
And during pregnancy.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I mean, I don't know if I think of it that differently during pregnancy than not. There's sort of different experiments that I would have you do to see, it kind of depends how intuitive you are. If you're craving sugar, then maybe that's telling us we need to look at your whole diet. Like, maybe you're not eating enough protein, right? And we need to balance out your blood sugar, and maybe that's a sign that there's something else going on that we have to look at. So yeah, I was trying to remember. I actually didn't have a lot of food cravings when I was pregnant. And I know it's different for everybody. But I know I had a lot of morning sickness, and I had to eat a lot of and I had to eat like just so much protein, right to kind of get up and eat protein right away, or else I would just kind of throw up. It was not very pleasant. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's good to, if you crave sour things, I was saying, well, maybe that's just your body telling you need to eat some fermented foods. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's sometimes when you crave things too, it's like information from the fetus too, telling you, hey, we need to get this food or we need that food. And I always just look at it as, I try to be more relaxed and balanced about things. Like if you're craving sugar, can we add things like more fruit, or, looking at the whole diet and what's going on. Like I said, for example, that's one thing. And then are you drinking enough water? Sometimes we crave sugar for that reason. And yeah, what are you craving? Are you craving something that's sentimental and can we, or more emotional, and do we need to sort of work on, is there something else underlying that you need to work on? But I think the cravings are interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Just in witnessing my sister go through that, and just hearing people talk about it, I'm like, that's so interesting. Because I mean, even when you're not pregnant, we crave stuff, and you kind of go through the same thought process. Like, am I craving something because I have an emotional need, or am I craving something because I need nutrients that item may provide? And just paying attention, being intuitive about what your body's trying to communicate.
Definitely. Yeah, it's really important. And yeah.
What during pregnancy, what else would you feel like a mom would need to consider or work on? Because of course, still the environment, like, that doesn't change. You still need to be real cognizant of that. What else have you had to work with people on during their pregnancy?
Well, I'm not, so in terms of not in terms of what I'm offering, I'm mostly working with people like helping getting pregnant and then postpartum. I do work with some moms throughout the pregnancy that I have relationships with. And that's just because in my state where I work in Massachusetts, I'm not able to offer full on. I'm not a midwife and OBGYN. So for naturopathic doctors in Massachusetts, I'm not able to provide like prenatal care, an exam, all of that. I do. Yeah. So I typically, when I'm working with people, I use a lot of herbs and nutrition and homeopathy, and then during pregnancy it would be less of the herbal medicines, depending on the trimester, of course. But in the beginning, it's just a lot of nutrition support and counseling support, and I think it really depends on what's needed in different situations. And I also do a lot of body work, so and I think there's different times, like second trimester, maybe there's more like leg cramps, and then third trimester, maybe more low back pain and hip pain and sciatica as things are, evolving, and the uterus is growing and the baby is growing. So, so I think it just depends on what's going on for each woman and what that person needs. And I would be doing less of the herbal medicine, like I said, and probably more homeopathic medicine and constitutional medicine, and just kind of getting everything set up. I think it's really important, especially it can be confusing too if you have like morning sickness, just to try to figure out what to eat in the beginning, and how to get enough hydration. That's kind of been a thing. And then usually it's just trying to do the most gentle thing that we can to support the unit, the mama and the baby unit, and doing things in safe, natural ways. And there's things that come up to like urinary tract infections and yeast infections, and then we have to say, okay, well, how can we do this? Sometimes maybe you do need the medication because it might be less harmful than doing what we would do normally with herbs. So this kind of depends, I think, on what's going on.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just, I imagine like being a problem solver.
Yeah, exactly.
How can we, what are you presenting with? Let's see how we can work on
that. And I think just doing a lot of listening is, and sometimes not being the person sometimes people are coming to me specifically for health advice or medical advice, but sometimes people just need to have a space to be listened to also, and just supporting and coaching, the mom and just letting her know she's doing a great job. And, I guess depending on it's like first time mom or second time mom or third time mom also makes a difference. But sometimes just listening and not giving a ton of advice can be really the most helpful thing, and just being there and being present.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure the moms are like, oh, thank
you. Yeah. And especially now too, it's a little bit better now, but I know when I was pregnant during mostly the COVID shutdown, and it was before vaccinations and stuff. So there was just less interaction, and in some ways that was nice, but in some ways it was lonely too. So I think having a practitioner that you can talk to and be listened to, and to just break up some of that isolation is helpful.
Yeah. And I imagine even for the emotional and mental health piece of it too, like stress.
Yeah. Yep. And that's another thing too, is just checking in and seeing where the moms are at, like you said, emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after delivery, what type of work do you do postpartum with the moms?
Yeah, so mostly what I'm doing postpartum is mostly a lot of support. So I'm not doing the exams. Like mostly people are already working with like their midwives or their OBGYNs to do their checkups and things like that. But mostly it's problem solving around, breastfeeding, lactation support, more when there's more so if there's issues that come up hormonally, and maybe mom's not producing enough milk. I'm not a lactation consultant, but I can help with herbs or nutrition, or again, problem solving and figuring out, is there something that's getting in the way, whether it's like emotionally or mentally, or just like the setup of the house, partners, that kind of thing, stress. And then providing some craniosacral support physically, to the changing body, and providing support specifically for C-section recovery as well. So I wound up having a C-section. It wasn't planned, and it was definitely, I was actually planning on doing a home birth, and there's a whole term for that, where it's like the home birth cesarean, where you're planning on doing a home birth and then you have a cesarean. So there's really a whole separate emotional and psychological sort of process that goes on, which, it can be very devastating for a lot of women that plan to either have like a vaginal birth in a birthing center, or in a home birth situation, and then find out that they have to have a C-section for various reasons. And so a lot of that, there's a lot of counseling, but then there's a lot of physical support too that needs to happen. And sometimes it's doing some some counseling around yoga or exercises that can be done, and or banding, belly support and banding. Belly binding is a wonderful practice I like to help women with, where you're helping to support the body and the belly, and kind of like get it help recover after postpartum time. And then it's just, again, sort of troubleshooting around what's needed for the mom, and then thinking about the baby as well. And there can be different things with breastfeeding but there can also be just physical pain afterwards that the mom needs help with. There can be just help with like figuring out setting up support, a lot of. And I usually say I like to have visits with people, with moms and families, really, or couples during the pregnancy time, in the last trimester, where you get ready for what we call the fourth trimester, or the first 40 days. And it's this concept that doesn't really exists like in a lot of other cultures and a lot of other countries, but not necessarily in the US so much. We've kind of lost it, and a lot of my generation and our generation, younger generations like yours, are picking up on it now. And it's this concept of needing to just get a lot, like have your village and your community support you with food, and staying close and staying at home, and not not running out to do yoga or do an errand like 2 weeks after, your baby, and just really focusing on bonding with your child, whether, if you're able to breastfeed or not, and just enjoying that precious time, at least for the first 40 days. And it's longer with the C-section recovery. I remember I couldn't even really drive, and it wasn't so much physically, it was more like emotionally, and like having the confidence to be able to drive again. I don't think I was able to drive until like a month out afterwards. And you see sometimes we try to be in this sort of like super mom culture, and we have to like get out and we have to do things, and it's the opposite. So it takes a lot of planning to really be able to have that time where you can just rest and have people take care of you. And especially for, there's, professional moms, or kind of moms that like I have, I have my own business. So it took a lot of planning to figure out how to set things up so that I could be on maternity leave for 3 months and have people support me and set up like a meal train and all of that, which is a way, it's just an easy way, a website where you can have people make, like you have a calendar and you have people sign up for different days, and people can make you food. And especially during COVID and stuff, it can be a nice way for people to just come and drop off food and, in a safe way.
Yeah. I see that support, and I imagine it felt very loved and supportive or supporting.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was so helpful. And we also had 2 postpartum doulas. And I highly recommend that. If people don't, a lot of people prepare, a lot of couples and moms prepare for the birth, but they don't necessarily prepare for afterwards. And postpartum doula is specifically helping with the mom and the baby. And, we had 2 at different times. Like one came in for a couple of months, and then she was going to go off and do other work. And then we had another one that came in for 2 months. And it was just so helpful to have somebody come into your home and like cook for you. And they, like you just don't have time or energy, and you don't necessarily want to spend your time or energy on sweeping or doing the dishes and things like that. And especially during COVID, it was really, I was, again, before vaccinations and stuff. So it was harder to have our friends come in or family come in and help us with things. And some people don't have that option of friends and family coming in too. So having a postpartum doula is really helpful for that. I highly recommend that as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. And some of them, they all do different things. Some of them can help with breastfeeding and lactation issues too.
Yeah. That seems to be a thing. With like, if you are having lactation issues, I can't even imagine like where to even start with that. But 30 minutes goes by so freaking quick. It's like a few minutes left. So I like to use this part of the show to just ask if you have any like virtual programs that you can offer folks for whoever is watching live or catches this later. They can reach out to you because your information will be in the description section. So if you have any workshops that you do or anything like that virtually, or if anyone's in mass, they can find you. Do you have anything you'd like to share with respect to that?
Yeah, I would share that right now I am offering consultations by telephone or by Zoom. So that's what I'm offering now for people that don't live in Massachusetts. I practice out of Greenfield, which is in Western Massachusetts, and I have folks that I work with from all over the country and some internationally as well. And there's a lot that we can accomplish just by the phone or with video consults, and it's become more the norm. So we're just really right now doing one-on-one consultations. And I'm working on kind of developing more of a team. Like I have a midwife and a postpartum doula that's going to be working in my space soon.
Nice.
Yeah, and she also does craniosacral for pregnant moms and babies, and she does herbal consultations. And so I'm kind of building my team, and I would love to offer more workshops for folks
Yeah.
that don't, online, that don't live necessarily near me. But I do also, I can do consultations, naturopathic consultations, and then I have done one-on-one cooking for folks that struggle with cooking, and we're working on a very specific, maybe anti-inflammatory diet or a certain type of nutrition program that I recommend, and people are like, well, I don't even know how to do anything, and I've done that out of my kitchen before,
Cool.
one-on-one with someone in Colorado. So that's also an option.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really, really appreciate your time. I imagine people have gotten a lot of good information, or at least a place to start to look for things and what to ask for when they go to embark upon that journey of childbirth. You threw a lot of good tips out there. So I want to thank you so much for your time, and thank anyone who is catching us live and those who catch us later. I really appreciate it. Share this with anyone you know could benefit from these tips that Dr. Nitya shared. And make sure you subscribe, click the bell so that you'll be notified whenever we go live or upload a new video. And with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll be notified anytime we upload a new video or go live. And as always, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to post it in the comments. We're always checking that. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day.